All right, so here's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna start with just kind of a quick review of the company foundation. So there are 6 things that this company, as far as what we have observed that top producing agents have, or that what top producing agents do. And we're going to spend time today talking about the business plan, which is one of the 6, but I want to give you the other 5 just to make sure you guys have them real quick. So the first thing that top producing agents all have is they have a purpose, or you could think of it as a vision, or they have dreams, or sometimes we'll even say it as they have a why. Okay, so that's the first thing. And secondary then to that is going to be a business plan. Oops, sorry, you started writing it. Sorry, I'm going to change that up a little bit. They have goals, a plan, which that would be business plan, and schedule. Okay. So that this is what we're gonna talk today about, is this piece of it, is the goals, plan, and schedule section. But like I said, I want to make sure you have the other 5 as well. So then number 3 is going to be mindset, is they have a strong mindset, which what you will notice is within the company, that's the reason we do so much in terms of a daily message. We do morning ascent every single day. We have base camps and summits, and all of that is designed around controlling and helping the mindset, and which really is tied to the daily message that will come out tomorrow. I actually just put it together to get sent out for tomorrow, is somewhat along the lines of this, in terms of, if you want to increase your income, you have to increase who you are, your personal development. So that's where mindset comes into play. Number 4 then is going to be discipline / accountability. So now that we have the right mindset, we've got the goals, plan, and schedule, then we got to have the discipline to go and actually do the business plan, or we get somebody that will hold us accountable to go and do it. Then number 5 is going to be skill sets. And there are 12 skills, which we're not going to go through today, but there are 12 specific skills that you need to be working on and refining and getting better at. And then number 6 then is going to be tools, strategies, and systems. Okay. So those are the 6 things that we have found as a company, is when you look at your business at any time, if you are wondering if it's on track, the first thing you should do is go through these 6 things and say, okay, do I understand my purpose, my vision, my why? Do I have that kind of fixed? If I do, then the next thing is to say, okay, have I set some goals? Do I have a plan to achieve those goals? And what's the schedule going to look like to get there? Then we would want to look at, how's our mindset? Am I disciplined to doing these things? Or should I get somebody to hold me accountable to do it? Do I have the skills necessary? And then finally, the systems, tools, and strategies, do I have those pieces in place? And if you do, if you can answer yes to these 6 things, the one thing I can tell you is your business is going to be thriving and doing well. If you ever feel like it's not, go back to, where am I off track on these things? What do I need to work on? What do I need to do? Okay, so now with that, we're going to go through and talk about the goals, plan, and schedule now, okay? So I'm going to give to you, and in fact, I sent out as an email yesterday that had the business plan on it, but I'm going to give to you guys the business plan here in just a few minutes. But before we do that, and for you guys on Zoom, so we got 2 on Zoom and 2 in person. So because of that, like, I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth. But so for you 2 that are on Zoom, like, I want you to participate. So unmute and ask questions, or I may ask questions of you guys as well. That way the pressure's not all on you 2. Okay, so here's the first one. So for you guys on Zoom, unmute and answer this is, in fact, I'm going to have to turn the sound up so we can hear them, actually. But for you 2 that are here, and you guys on Zoom, have any of you read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? No, you have not, Derek?
No, I haven't.
Okay, how about you, Erica?
I have not either.
Okay, good. Well, so we're going to go through, I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of that. So one of the things you're going to see on the business plan that I give to you is going to have a spot for you to write down like books that you want to read or audio things you want to listen to. So as I go through and teach classes, you're going to hear me from time to time. You'll hear me refer to, this would be a great book if you haven't read it. So this is the first one now, is the author is Robert Kiyosaki. The book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you have not read that, I would recommend that you read that book. So what we're going to talk about now, though, comes from that book. So this first piece we're going to talk about. In that book, he has something that he calls the cash flow quadrant. So now keep in mind, we're going to go through and talk about goals, plan, and schedule. But as we're doing that, or in preparation for doing that, what we're going to do is I first got to get some groundwork, some pieces in place. So, and with that being said, in terms of this business plan that I'm going to give to you, we're not going to fill out the business plan today, and you'll see why here in just a minute, because part of filling out the business plan is I'm going to give you some assignments of things that you need to work on as you put together your business plan, and you'll see what that looks like in just a minute. But in this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about something called the cash flow quadrant. Okay, so we're going to talk about the cash flow quadrant here before we get into our actual business plan. And the first thing that he talks about in this quadrant, the first area of this is what's called employee. Okay, so employee. Now, what he says in the book is that typically, check one thing. Yes, thanks, Melissa, for throwing that in there. For Derek and Erica, if you'll just throw in the chat box your name so that I have a record when I can print this out after the fact, I would appreciate that so that I know who is in class. Okay, so the first section he talks about is employee. Now, what he says in there is that's typically where we start. And actually, let me even back up for a minute. The premise of this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, was Robert Kiyosaki grew up in Hawaii. And he had what he says is a rich dad and a poor dad. His rich dad was actually his father that he lived with and grew up with. What he calls, did I say his rich dad? His poor dad was the one that he lived with. His rich dad was his best friend's dad that just kind of mentored him on the finance side of things. So he says, I had my poor dad that he loved, that taught him other things, but this other rich dad, which is really just his friend's dad. Well, one of the first things he taught him is this cash flow quadrant. And typically where most of us start out our work is as an employee, is we go and get a job working for someone. And how much control do you have over your income, your time, all that kind of stuff as an employee? Yeah, not too much, meaning you get told, here's when you need to come to work. You get told, where to be, what you're going to do there, how much money you're going to make. It's kind of, you just get to be told what to do, which is great. That's typically where we're going to start. But then the next phase of this, which comes down here into this quadrant, in this cash flow quadrant, is what he calls self-employed. So now, what is the difference between being an employee versus being self-employed?
You make your own hours of cash flow.
Okay, good. So down here is where we can decide when we're going to work. We can say what we're going to do. We can decide how we want to do it, how much we want to charge, all of those kinds of things, right? Now, so for me, when I first came into real estate, I had been working at a bank. And I left the bank to come into real estate. And when I did, the reason was because what I said is, I want to go be self-employed. I said, I want to go work where the harder I work, the more money I will get paid, because I felt like I was a good worker at the job that I worked at, but it didn't change my pay. I mean, like a little bit it did, like meaning I got new promotions, stuff like that. But I still felt like I worked harder than what I was getting. Like I felt like I was worth more than I was working for. So I decided I wanted to go do a job where I could be self-employed, which I came into real estate. Well, so that's this section. Now, the next section up here, this next quadrant is what he calls a business owner. What is the difference between being self-employed and being a business owner? So Zoom, we'll let you guys answer this one.
I would say a business owner is someone that has the ability to like employ people and kind of help them grow their business.
Good. Yeah, so that's great. And sorry, I keep seeing you throw a chat in here, Melissa, but then I have to come over and read it. So yeah, so you're responsible for other people and their incomes. Good. Okay, so yeah, typically that's the answer that I get, which is good. I'm not saying that's a bad answer. It is part of the equation. But I want to ask a follow-up question to that. So the difference, typically the answer that I get when I ask what's the difference between self-employed and a business owner is people usually will give the answer of the business owner has employees. Now, what I want you guys to think about is why do we assume that? And I'm not saying it's a bad or a wrong assumption, but why is it that we look at it and why wouldn't we say self-employed has employees? Why would we say a business owner has employees and self-employed?
Because to grow your business and provide more products, you gotta have more people working.
Okay, so and I didn't ask the question very well, so let me ask it again. You're right. So let me ask it this way. The person who owns the business is really self-employed, aren't they?
Mhm.
So what's the difference? And maybe it's what you're saying, Vincent, is just that ultimately they're growing the business. So which you're headed where I want you to go, but I want to take it to another level even. So why or how? And I don't know that it's a why or a how question, but either way, like, why is this business growing and this one then assuming that they now have employees because they're growing the business? Why did that happen versus it doesn't necessarily down here?
I'll unmute now because my daughter's not playing the piano anymore.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Then you don't have to walk over and see. My thought is that the business owner is trying to get to a point where they can step away and not really do anything other than just manage from afar.
Okay, good. Good. So you're on the right track. Good. So, and to some extent, I know we're playing a little bit of see if you can guess what I'm thinking. So I get that, but I'm trying to lead you there rather than just say it, and everything you guys are saying is right on, meaning part of what Melissa's saying is part of the idea of becoming a business owner is we don't want to have to do it forever. So we want to grow and create something, which again, now tying this back to the foundation, the systems, tools, and strategies, that's why we have to have these systems, tools, and strategies. See, when I look out the window, the first business I see over here is Chick-Fil-A. And I think about them and go, okay, do they have systems, tools, and strategies? Yes. And in fact, actually, my middle son actually works for Chick-fil-A. He wants to become a Chick-fil-A owner. And he was telling me the owner of this Chick-fil-A right here has not been in that store since COVID hit. So the owner has not even gone in the store. He has cameras in there that he pulls up and looks at online to see what's going on and calls them and tells them, hey, this is what I see or whatever. But to some extent, so I think what Melissa's saying is right on, is like, we want to grow it. Okay, so, but I would also say, I think the self-employed person potentially wants to do that too, but maybe doesn't know how or doesn't take the time to do it, whatever. So here's part of where I'm going, is part of what I think the difference of between being self-employed, and I don't know how many of you guys are thinking of that as you came into real estate, is that I'm going to be self-employed, because that was me. I came into this thinking I want to be self-employed. Well, what I've learned over time though, is I don't want to be self-employed. I actually want to be a business owner. So I'm going to ask you from today forward to think of yourself as a business owner, not as a self-employed. And here's why. Because typically we think about people that are self-employed. Stop and think about people that you would throw into this category. If we were to make a list of like specifically, who do you know that you would classify as being self-employed versus who do you know that you would put as a business owner? My guess would be the people that you would list here as self-employed are going to be people who are doing this business, whatever it is, this self-employed business, more as trying to think of the right word I want to use. Not necessarily to grow a business, but to just not have to be an employee. And maybe that's probably the way of saying it is, it's not that they actually want to run a business, but they also don't want to work for somebody. So it's kind of like they want to do just enough to get by. And so for me, here's what I'm saying. If you were to make a list of people that you know as self-employed, more than likely, the people that you would throw into this quadrant would be people that are not hugely successful. And I don't, like I say, I don't mean that negative, but meaning they might have a decent income, but they're not growing it. It's just like, as I think about, there's one guy in particular that I worked for right out of high school that I think about him and I'm like, I would say he was self-employed. Even though I worked for him as an employee, I would have said he still fell into this category because he wasn't running it like a business. We were doing like remodels and building garages or whatever at people's houses, but it wasn't like a business. And in fact, when I quit working for him, the reason I quit working for him is he came to me one day and goes, I got no other business. And I don't know when the next job's going to show up. See, he wasn't doing stuff to grow a business. He was kind of just like a lot of realtors sitting back waiting for business to come to him. And then when there wasn't any, he had to come to me and say, sorry, I don't have any jobs. So you might want to go find a new job. That to me is the self-employed. Now, the other guy that I worked for around that same time, doing the same thing, I would tell you as a business owner though. He actually was growing his business. And I look at those two today. This guy, the one that I know that I would say is a business owner, is probably in a position he could retire now versus the other guy is still doing odd jobs around. I would still say he kind of fits into the self-employed. So again, my whole point of all this is from today forward, don't think about yourself as self-employed. Think of it as being a business owner. The second piece that I would add to that is there is a difference in filing your taxes as a self-employed person versus a business owner. And now, this is the point of the class though that I got to say, I am not an accountant. I'm not a tax attorney. So do not rely on what I'm about to say. Okay. But you should talk to a CPA or a tax attorney or something and find out for you how you should be structured. Because what I found for me, so when I started to make money in real estate, I was still filing my taxes as this self-employed person. Went to my guy that I did taxes with because I had heard from other agents that they had set themselves up as corporations or as businesses. And so I went to my tax guy and said, hey, we've been filing taxes as this self-employed, and I'm wondering if I should switch. And the guy that did my taxes said, no, I don't think you should switch. And I said, okay. So the next year, my income doubled. I had made twice as much as I had the year before. I went and sat down with him to do my taxes. And he said, you know what we ought to do is we ought to get you set up as a business. It would save you some money on taxes. I was ticked because I had asked him the year before. So I went to meet with an actual, not somebody just that prepares taxes, but a CPA. And when I went and met with the CPA, he said, yeah, I could have saved you probably $10,000 in taxes, which that hurt a little bit. So from that point on, I then got set up as a business. Now, the reason for that is all of the politicians that are back in Washington, D.C. get their money for their campaigns and things from where?
Employees. Self-employed.
No, they get them from business owners. Yeah, their campaigns are funded by these businesses. So when it comes time for laws and all that kind of stuff in terms of taxes, they're typically going to be a little more generous to the business owner. Now, so what I mean by that is this: when you're filing taxes as a self-employed, you take whatever your 1099 income is and you get to write off basically some basic stuff. But as a business owner, Now, again, this is where I got to emphasize, I am not a CPA or a tax attorney, so don't I may not have all the perfect information, but as a business owner, what I have found is I get my income that comes in, and then I spend that money on whatever expenses to run the business, and then you pay taxes on what's left over. Does that make sense? So like my cell phone bill, my car, all of those kinds of things are expenses that I get to deduct off of my income before I then pay taxes. So here's how I always say it. I love paying taxes. I love it. After I have taken advantage of every opportunity to reduce the amount of taxes I'm going to pay. After that, then I am actually grateful to pay my taxes. And the reason why is I like having roads and I like having sidewalks and all the infrastructure of the things that those go for. Now, some people might go, yeah, but the government's corrupt and they could, and I'll say, yeah, they could do a better job. But, as far as I know, this is still the best country in the world to live in. So I'm grateful to pay my taxes after I've written off as much as I can. Once I've written off as much as I can, then I'll gladly pay that tax. Okay, now, so one of the first things I would recommend for you guys as we are structuring this is you want to figure out, should I get set up as an LLC, as an S Corp? Like what type of company should I be set up as so that I can write a lot of that stuff off? See, done right, when you go on vacations, you can turn those into work trips if you'll go and do some real estate type related things while you're there. So, and again, I'm not the CPA, so talk to your tax guy before you go writing off all this stuff. But that's the business owner, okay? And then so the biggest thing I would say on the business owner is they have a plan and a schedule. See, that's the difference. That's why I'm saying I want you guys to, from today forward, think of yourself as a business owner, which means I'm going to have a business plan, which we're going to talk about. But then also I have a schedule that I follow. Again, I love using Chick-Fil-A as the example on this because here's what you may or may not know about Chick-fil-A. So first thing let me ask is what day of the week is Chick-fil-A not open?
Sunday.
Okay, Sundays, right? Now, Chick-fil-A is based out of Atlanta, is where their headquarters are. Where the Atlanta Falcons play football, the stadium there is I think it's called Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Inside of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, there is a Chick-fil-A. Now, what day do the Atlanta Falcons play most of their games?
Sunday.
And what day is Chick-fil-A not open?
Sunday.
So do you think when they went into the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they said, oh, we're going to open on Sunday? No. See, they know their schedule. They follow what their schedule is. So when I first heard that, I was like, so I wonder if they'll open on Sunday since it's now inside the stadium where most of the football games are on Sunday. But they didn't because they know what their schedule is. See, that's part of what I would say for you guys is as you put together your schedule and your business plan, build it based upon your values and what you want to do. Then run your business according to that. See, Chick-fil-A doesn't change their business based on the fact that, oh, we put it in the stadium where the football games are on Sunday. Now, good news is there's concerts and all the other stuff that goes on that are on different days of the week that they can open. But the principle behind it should be the same for you is figure out what your schedule is going to look like and then run yourself as a business the same way. Okay. All right. So that's a business owner. And then the last category is what we would call investor. So this is the last of the cash flow quadrant, is the investor. What is the difference between being a business owner and being an investor?
So like when you're an investor, you do totally step back and you kind of let your money work for you.
Perfect. That's exactly right. So here you're kind of what Melissa said is you're kind of getting yourself the ability to step away. Here, you're not involved in the day-to-day of it. You basically are just, I'm giving the money, the way I like to think about it is your money becomes your employees. They go out, your money goes out and does the work and then hopefully brings back a whole bunch of friends with them, right? That's the idea. So now here's the thing. So part of, again, from today forward, I want you guys to not be on this side of the quadrant. I want you to think this side. You're a business owner with the intention of becoming the investor. And we have within our profession the ability to find properties that are really good deals that we can fix them up and turn around and sell them. So that's where I want you to kind of start thinking towards is I want to work towards becoming this investor, but I'm going to first treat myself as a business owner right out of the gate. Does that make sense? All right. All right. And then actually, since he wrote the book, he's now come up with a fifth area, which we're not really going to talk about today. But the fifth area after being an investor is what's called being a philanthropist. So like basically he says you go from being an employee to self-employed to becoming a business owner to the investor. And then the philanthropist does what with their money? Gives it all away. That's the idea is then now we've made all this money. Now what we want to do is start just giving that money away, using it as a way to help other people. So now the reason I bring that up is tied to where we're headed next. Okay. So now let me, with that, hopefully you guys online have a copy of the business plan. If you don't, then let me know and I'll get you one. So we're not, like I said, we're still not actually going to go through and fill out this business plan, but I'm going to get you started on it. Okay. So you'll notice on this business plan here that it says it's a business plan for, and then it has blank for 20 blank. So the idea of this is you could fill this out and I'll let you guys decide how you want to do this. But you're going to decide as far as filling out your business plan, are you going to fill it out for the rest of this year? Or are you going to do it for from, you know, July to next July kind of a thing? And either way is fine. But the next thing down there, let me just read this quote to you, is from Earl Nightingale. It says, success is really nothing more than the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. This means that any person who knows what they are doing and where they are going is a success. Any person with a goal towards which they are working is a successful person. So just kind of keep that in mind of success is really nothing more than the progressive realization of something you're working towards, okay? Which is why up here we have this purpose, vision, and goals and all those is if you're working towards knowing what you want to do, you're going to be a success. Okay, so then section 1 is the spot where you can put your previous numbers, which my assumption is most everybody is either new or newer to the point where you don't have a previous year's numbers. So some of that you may just have to leave blank and say, okay, I'll figure that out next year once I get this, okay? Section 2 then is going to talk about our 2022 goals that you're going to do for the rest of this year. And the first thing it asks for there is commissions earned. Now, so here's the next step of this. Before you write in a number on this commissions earned, this is where I've got an assignment for you, okay? Now, and you're not going to report it back to me necessarily, but one of the things that I will say to you that you should do, when you fill out this business plan, remember back here on our foundation that I talked about discipline and accountability. When you fill out your business plan, you need to share that with someone that will hold you accountable to doing it. Okay, so create the business plan and then give it to either one of the managers here at the office, find another agent. Well, for sure, you should do that with the managers. Get with whoever the coach is for you at the company. You should get with them, give them a copy of your business plan and say, hold me accountable to this. This is what I'm going to do. By you doing that, gives you that level of like, okay, now I've said I'm going to do it. I have to do it. Okay. All right. So the first thing though, before you do all that and fill this out, is it asks for your goal in terms of commissions earned. Now, the way that most people work is this. Typically what happens, and this was true for me. So I've had my license since 1996. So what, that's 26 years. Yeah, 26 years. Little over 26 years now. When I came into real estate 26 years ago, my goal in income was probably the same as most of you. 26 years ago, my goal of what I wanted to make from real estate is probably the same as most of you. And that is because the reason I say that is most people come into real estate with the goal of making how much money in income? What would you guess?
Anything over 40,000.
Over 40? Okay, good. What about you guys on Zoom? What do you think? What do you think the most common number is people set as a goal?
100 grand.
100,000. That's exactly right. is what, and here's the funny thing. 26 years ago, when I came into real estate, my goal was I want to make $100,000 a year. Now, nothing wrong with that, except for it doesn't mean anything. Like when we come into it and we go, I want to make $100,000. Yeah, we do. And it sounds great, but the very, very few agents do it though. That's the other thing that's interesting. It's very, very few agents will do it. In fact, not to scare you too much, but 13 out of 14 agents will be gone within 2 years. And why do they leave? Why do they get out of real estate?
They don't make the money.
They're not making any money. And so they get out of real estate because they're not making money. Well, 50% of the agents, people who are licensed in the Salt Lake Valley, Wasatch Front, actually, let's even just say, sell 0 houses every year. 50% of the agents sell 0 houses. But yet, almost every one of them has a goal of making how much in real estate? Over $100,000. So my point in that is there must be a different way we should go about doing it, because we got half of the agents that are licensed in this area that want to make $100,000 a year and they don't do it. So I'm going to actually give you the secret to actually, or one of the secrets to how to do it. Okay. Now, so here's what it looks like. Rather than just writing on that line, I want to make 100,000, or Vince for you of saying 40,000, like, which, and there is zero judgment for me. I don't care what number you use. If you would have said 20, I'd be like, awesome. Like, I don't really care. Zero judgment for me. But this is what I do know is if you'll do what I'm about to say, you'll probably change that goal from being 40. It'll change somewhat, but it'll also mean something else to you, which means you're more likely to do it. Okay. So now here's the thing. So how do we do it? Here's what we need to do when we're going to set our goals. This is the process we need to start with. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is just write down how much money do you need on a monthly basis. So just to survive, to pay for food, to pay for gas, to pay for your housing, whatever travel, your car, whatever it is, like just on a monthly basis, what is your monthly outgo that you're committed to of like, at a minimum, I got to make X. And like I say, you don't have to necessarily write it exactly down right now, but if you know it, great. But if you don't, that's the first thing. You got to figure out how much do I need just on a monthly basis to just survive. Okay. And then you're going to write it down. The next thing you're going to look at is say this: how much debt, if any, that you have, do you want to eliminate in the next year? So, and I'm not saying you have to eliminate like, let's say you just bought a house for 500,000. I'm not saying you got to go, okay, my goal is to pay it off in the next year. But I'm also saying if you decided that's what you want to do, then that's fine too. But just decide like how much of the debt that I have, school loans, car payments, RC Willie, whatever it is, like anything that you owe money on, how much of that do you want to eliminate in the next year? And then write it down. So just write whatever that, credit cards, whatever it is, write down what you're going to do in terms of eliminating that. Okay. Next, vacations or trips. Okay. So in the next year, what vacations or trips are you going to go on? Now, this is where things are going to change just a little bit from how you typically have probably planned in the past. Because typically what we do is we go, okay, I want to go to wherever. You decide on a trip and then you would write down like it's going to probably cost X amount of dollars. Well, here's how I want you to do it. Rather than just saying, I want to go on this trip, what I want you to actually do is go plan the trip. Meaning, go online and figure out like, how much is the airfare going to be? Like, so decide, when am I going? How much is the airfare going to be to fly at that time? Write it down. Where are you going to stay at when you get there? Go online, go to the hotel or whatever it is you're going to stay at, figure out how much that's going to cost. What are you going to do while you're there? So figure out whatever excursions or things you're going to do, write that down, how much it's going to cost. Then from there, like, what are you going to do as far as food and stuff? Write that down. So your transportation while you're there, rental car, whatever, figure out all of that, but basically plan the trip and then write down how much it's gonna cost. Now, let me pause for a minute on this. I had an agent who, so I have been training agents for the last, I don't know, 15-ish years. But I've been here at Everest for 7 years. So 7 years ago, and it was probably about this time, 7 years ago, this month even, I started this training program that we do now of peak agent training. But I've done similar training at Coldwell Banker up the street for 10 years-ish. But so I've been here for 7 years though, training. And in the first time I taught this class here at Everest, there was a lady from down in our Orem office that she came to this training. And when we got to this part of this class, and I said, okay, you need to go plan your vacations and trips. Now, one of the things I always joke about, and I don't know how many of you guys, Melissa will appreciate it. I don't know enough about the rest of you guys, but you'll probably appreciate, well, you guys, you that are sitting here won't appreciate this, I don't think. But Melissa will appreciate it. Some of the rest of you may or may not. Do you know what the difference between a trip and a vacation is? So I'll ask Melissa, since I know for sure she'll get it.
Yeah, a trip you take your kids, a vacation you don't take your kids.
Yes, see, that's the difference. So the reason I write down trips and vacations is if the kids are going with you, that's a trip. It's not a vacation. It's when it's just you and your significant other. That's the vacation. All right. So anyway, okay. So in the process of that, I had made that joke, and this lady raised her hand and she said, I have never taken my kids anywhere for a vacation or a trip. She said, like, and at this point, this lady was older than me. And she said, my kids are all grown. But she said, I never once took them anywhere. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you never took them anywhere? She's like, well, we went up like in the mountains camping, but we never actually went like to Disneyland or something like that. And so I said, okay, well, for you then, I said, as you plan this out, I told her, I want you to go actually go online, figure out how much the airfare is going to be. Because she said, I want to take my kids and go to Disney World. So I said, great. Go online and find out how much it's going to cost to fly. Because I said, are you going to pay for their airfare? Yes. Okay, great. Go figure out how much it's going to cost to fly them there. I said, when you get there, what hotel are you going to stay at? And I don't remember what she said, but she said, I'll figure it out. I said, great. Figure out how much that hotel costs. Are you paying for their hotel rooms? She said, yes. Great. Find out how much that's going to cost to get their rooms. Are you going to pay for their tickets at Disney World? Yes. Okay, great. Find out how much that's going to cost. And then plan this whole trip and then write down the number. And she said, okay. So she left and a year and a half went by. So a year and a half later, we're at a summit. She comes walking up to me and says, Russ, I don't know if you remember me, but I was in your class a year and a half ago. And I remember her. I said, yeah, I remember you. And she said, I just have to report back to you that since I took your classes, I made $120,000. Now, part of this, let me back up that I left out of the story. When she said she had never taken her kids on any trips or vacations, is she said, was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't work. I just raised my kids. And she said, and my husband had a job that basically would just pay the bills. Like, she's like, we weren't by any means getting rich. We could just survive on his income. And then I stayed home with the kids. And she said, now that the kids are gone, I want to go work. So for her to come to me and report that she had made $120,000, she was like, I can't believe it. And to be honest with you, the day in class that she said she had never taken her kids on a trip or a vacation, I probably even would have said, if you would have asked me, do you think she'll actually do that and go pay for her kids to go on this trip? I would have said, probably not. Like, I just didn't know that she would. Yet here she is a year and a half later, says to me, I made $120,000. And she said, and I had to report back to you. I did exactly what you said here. And she said, I took that. She had just gotten back within the last few months of that, from this trip that they took that she paid for her kids and her grandkids to all go to Disney World. And she said, thank you for telling me to do that, because it's what caused it to happen. So that's why I'm saying for you guys, as you do this, you can't just throw out a number. So like Vince, I'm gonna keep coming back to you. Just, and maybe you've done more with it, but typically what people will do is they'll set the goal for their income because they haven't made that amount before. So there's not really a reason other than just, well, that feels like the next level of income I should get. But what I'm saying is toss that out and instead say, how much do I need on a monthly basis? What debts do I want to eliminate? What trips or vacations am I going to go on? Plan them and then write it down. Okay, next. The next thing you're going to just do is, I'm just going to list it as here, things that you want to buy. Okay. What other things do you want? Like a new car, new set of golf clubs. I mean, whatever it is, new computers, like whatever it is, things you want to buy. Right. But actually, again, this isn't just writing down a number. It's actually thinking through, like, what are the things that I want to buy? And so again, if it's a car, if you're wanting to buy some type of a new car, actually go down to the dealership, drive it, figure out what the options, all of that of exactly the car you want. And I would even recommend, so a lot of times people will do a vision board, which is great. I've got nothing against vision boards. I just think there's another level to which we could do these vision boards. Because see, if you've done it right on this vacations and trips that we just talked about, you're actually printing off the hotel you're going to stay at. You're printing off the airline, like all of that stuff, and putting that on your vision board to where it actually, like, it means something. Well, same thing with these things you're going to buy. If you're wanting to buy a new car, go down and drive the new car, figure out the options, figure out the price, take a picture of yourself in front of it, put the picture of you standing in front of the car with the, make, model, options you want, put that on your vision board. See, that actually means more than just getting a magazine and cutting out a picture and sticking it on there, okay? Get actually something that means something. So figure out the things you want to buy, go plan it, look at them, take a picture of them, those type of things, and then write down, all right, at the end of the year, I want to have bought, da, 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 da. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, once you've done that, you're going to now come up with a number, but we're still not done. Okay. So that number that you're going to come up right there should represent 70% of how much money you're going to set as your goal. Now, again, another book that I would recommend. So I'm going to share another piece. This principle I'm going to share with you now comes out of a book. I think this might not even actually be the first place it came up, but because I've heard it a number of places. But another book that I would recommend that you read if you have not is, it's written by, the author's name is Og Mandino, and the book is The Richest Man in Babylon. So if you have not, this one's like, you could read it in a week easily, like maybe even a couple of nights you could read through. But what he says is you should basically live off of 70% of your income. So whatever income you're going to make here that we just outlined should equate to be 70% of what your total that you want to earn in the next year should be. Does this make sense? Okay, now why and how does that work? Well, here's what he says. So where does the other 30% go is this. The first 10% should go to some type of a charity. So 70% you're going to live off. 10% of your income should go to a charity. So you pick whatever charity you want. I don't care what it, United Way, Red Cross, like whatever it is. I don't care. A church, whatever you want to do, but 10% should go to some type of a charity. Now, remember I said I love paying taxes after I've written everything off? Well, the reason is because, like I said, I want to have our country still survive and keep being the best place to live. So I'm grateful to do that. Well, the other piece of this is part of what we need to do is be willing to give back and to help other people out along the way. So we should have this being 10%. Okay. Then the next 10% should be what we call passive investing. What would be passive investing? Any ideas on Zoom or here? All right, I'll tell you. So passive investing would be like giving your money to a bank or some type of an institution to where you let them manage it. So if it's a 401k or, IRA, anything like that, where you're giving a whole life insurance policy, whatever it is, but that's going to be passive. So you're giving your money to somebody else to invest for you. It would be passive investing. Okay. Now, why should we do passive investing? The idea of that is part of what makes our economy work is this passive investing that we do. Now, so when COVID hit in March of 2020, I remember probably about April-ish. Remember all the toilet, you could never find toilet paper anywhere. Remember all that? So after that kind of happened, I remembered having this thought one day of, I wonder if we should go to the bank and get a bunch of cash out and just have a bunch of money in cash at the house. And I stopped myself from doing it for this one reason, because what would have happened to our banking system if every one of us went to the bank and said, I need to pull my money out? You know what would have happened? Anybody?
No,
No paper money.
no money. There'd be no money left.
Yeah, well, it's because here's why. So remember I said I worked at a bank? Like, I don't know if, did I tell you guys that already? Yeah, I worked at a bank before I came into real estate. So I know a little bit about this. The banks do not, however much money you have in your account, if you went to whatever bank and you took every person who has an account with that bank and how much money they've put into that bank, the bank does not have that much cash. And so the idea of the Federal Reserve is they kind of control that, of telling the banks how much money they have to keep on reserve. So the banks have so much money, so much actual cash there, and it's a percentage of the total deposits that people have given them. So, but it's a small percentage, because what does the bank do if I go and put, say, $100 into my savings account? What does the bank do with that $100? Because they don't just save it.
They loan it to someone else.
That's right. They go, and then somebody else goes in and says, I need to go buy a new car. They take the money you've given them at the bank, and then they give it to them to go buy a car. So now the money you gave them, that $100 I gave, they may have taken 10 of that to give to the person who went to buy a car, and then somebody else comes in and wants to get a loan for something else, and so they give them that, a house loan or whatever, and so they take another $50 out of my 100. So the only reason I stopped myself from going to the bank is I was like, the worst thing that could happen is if eventually the bank would have to say, we don't have any more money. Well, what's that? If I've gone and taken my money out and then you go to the bank and they say, sorry, we don't have any, it's all gone. Like, you're going to be ticked. Like, hey, no, I put my money in here, I want to get it back. So part of the idea of that is so for me, this idea of passive investing. So here's the next level that you may or may not have put the connection to yet. Do most people buying a house get a loan or pay cash?
You get
They get loans. So where does that money come from that they're getting loans? From the bank, from us, right? So that's the idea of this. So part of why we want to do 10% of passive investing with our money is that we're then doing our part to helping our economy keep running. See, because the more money that people put then in banks, the more money there is to loan, which is going to bring the rates down and all that. So that's the idea of this. So 10% of the income we're going to make, we should be investing into passive investments. So we should be putting it into some type, either IRA, 401k, money markets, like any of that kind of stuff is where 10% should go. The final 10% then should go to active investing. What's active investing? If passive is somebody else doing it, what would active be?
You doing it.
Yeah, you doing it. That's right. So you should then have 10% that you're going to use for active investing, of you having the money to say, I'm going to go and buy this and then fix it up and sell it for that or whatever. So again, coming back to us being in real estate, a great way to use this active money is you're going to go out and knock on doors, or people are going to call you. You're going to come across some really good deals. You're going to come across properties that you're like, holy cow, this person just wants out. And they've said, I don't really care. Just, I need the money ASAP, get it sold here, at least for this price. You're gonna come across really good deals for properties. What you want to do is be in a position that you can say, well, I'll just buy it from you if you want to do that. So let me give you a quick story on it. So probably about, what day was it? I don't know, a little over a year ago. A friend of mine that lives down in St. George called me up and said, hey, my dad lives in Woods Cross at Bountiful. And he said, I need you to help me get his place sold. We found out he's got cancer. And so we're going to sell his house. I'm going to move him down to St. George. He can just live with me while he goes through his treatments. Great. So I meet him at the house. We get to the house and we're looking at it. It's got a flat roof. It's built before 1978 and the paint is chipped and peeling, which means what? It's built before 1978. What's the concern?
Lead-based paint.
Possible lead-based paint. So I say to my buddy, I go, okay, two things that I noticed of your dad's house that you need to be concerned with. First one is it's a flat roof. My experience is, and maybe my experience is wrong, but I said, my experience is every time I've sold a home where I've listed a home that has a flat roof, you've had to redo the roof. So I said, when is the last time your dad redid the tar and gravel on the roof? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, if you don't know, there's a pretty good chance he's going to have to do it again. So just plan for that. There's a pretty good chance he's going to have to do it again, because if it's been the last few years, you're probably fine. But seriously, every single time I've listed a home that's had a flat roof with tar and gravel, it ends up needing to be redone. So I said, just plan for that. And then I said, that one's a maybe. The next one that is for sure is the paint on the whole exterior of the house is cracked or peeling. And I said, built prior to 1978, it's going to be a concern. And if it gets tagged as part of the transaction, you're going to have to get them out here with hazmat suits on, scraping and painting and all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend you get that done first. Whether you hire professionals to come in with hazmat suits on to scrape and paint, or you guys do it yourself, like whatever you're going to do, I would get that done. So we've talked through all of the stuff that I'm saying that, if you want to get a good price for the property, or at least not, just have somebody think it's an investor special, this is all the stuff you should do. So my buddy says to me, and I gave him a price. I said, if you do that stuff, this is what I think you could sell the home for. And he said, problem is, I live in St. George. I'm going to have to be the one up here doing it. And he's like, I don't really want to take the time to come up and do all that kind of stuff. He goes, if you had somebody that would just pay him $250,000 cash, he'd probably just take it and walk away. And I said, well, if you're serious, I probably do. Me. And he said, no, seriously, let me talk to him and I'll get back to you. So he goes in the house, talks to him, calls me a little bit later, says, my dad will do it. So bought it, went in, totally got it all painted, rehabbed, all that kind of stuff, turned around and sold the house. That's the idea of this active investing. As you come across deals, like, we don't want to take advantage of anybody. And I wasn't, like, he was the one who threw out to me. If somebody would pay $250,000 for it cash, he would probably sell it. Great. If you're serious, we'll do it. That's the idea of this. Okay. So this then should be the other 30%. So once we come up with this number here, we're then going to divide that into the 70% to figure out what is the total. Once I've done that, now I'm going to write down the number. Okay. So once you've figured out all of this, now you can write down on this business plan, here's my commissions earned goal. Here's how much money I want to make. Now, what do you think the chances are? So Vince, I'm going to pick on you again still. Are you okay if I call you? Vince is good, right? Not Vincent? Okay. And remind me your name, Monet?
Monet.
Okay, perfect. So what do you think the chances are when you go through and do this, that you're going to come up with 40,000?
It's a bit over, but it's still close.
Okay. It will still be close. Okay. But and here's where I was really headed to. What I mean by that is it's not going to be a round number. It's not going to be 40,000. It might be, based on what you said, it might be $44,652. That's what you write down. So whatever the number you come up with, do not round it. So don't round it up. Like, so let's say you came up with 46,000. Don't just go, I'll just say 50 there. No. Put the $46,582, whatever it is. Write that number down as your goal. Now, why? Why do I want you to write it down exactly with what it's going to be?
Because I'm making an effort.
That's right, because that, when you write it down the way that I just said, every one of those dollars means something. Versus if you just say 50,000, it doesn't really mean anything. But if you say it as the exact number, like that's hopefully what's happened is when you go through this exercise that I just talked about, is that it gets you excited to become the investor. See, and that's the way we're going to become the investor is through this process here. Okay. And let me actually just say one other thing that I think is a good idea to focus on this active investing. What you're looking for on your active money that you're investing, like on a house or something like that, if you bought a house, or let's say you bought a stock or whatever. What you're looking for on this active investing is a 10% return. If you can just, every time you put your money to work, remember that's the idea of this investor. Every time I put my money to work, what I'm hoping for and targeting is a minimum of a 10% return. And I'm saying I look for a 10% return that's like, okay, yes, it'll easily, like I'm buying a house to fix it up and sell it. I'm looking for, can I at least get a 10% return? Is that minimum? And then you'll have some that you hit home runs on every now and then. But a lot of times you may end up with just getting that 10%, which great. If you can just constantly get that 10%, it's going to work awesome. All right, so you're going to write down that number. So now with that, let's go back to our business plan here. So now that I have written down my total commissions earned goal, and you've got the idea now of how to go about and do it. And here's the thing, like if you do this, and I hope you do, but if you do it and you have an experience like that agent that I told you about, I want to hear about it. Like if you wrote it down and you had all this, and then once you achieve it, like I want to hear about it. That's the payment for me for doing my training. Is I want to hear that, hey, I went through and did it. And so Vince, a year from now, when you make over whatever the number is, I want to hear like, hey, I did it. It was awesome. So, okay. All right. So now, next thing then, total closed transactions. So let's just do this. So let's say here then, and actually, even though I just told you don't round it, I'm going to just use round numbers now just for the ease of this. But so let's say that I came up with that I wanted to have a $250,000 income. Okay. So this is saying, okay, total closed transactions. So if I want to make $250,000, how many transactions do I need to do in order for that to take place? So the first thing we want to start with is what is our average commission that's going to get paid out? Okay. And let's just say that it's going to be $10,000. Okay. So you guys help me on this. If I'm going to get on average $10,000 per closing, and I want to get $250,000, how many closings do I got to do? No, less.
25.
25. Okay, so I got to do 25 transactions. So that's the idea of this is once we come up with the number, now we're going to say, okay, how many transactions do I have to do in order for that to take place? So now we just came up with 25. So then 2C says total appointments attended. Well, if I need to get 25 closings to take place, how many appointments am I going to have to go on in order for that to happen? Well, here's what I would recommend. Now, this is going to vary. Every one of you is going to have a different number, okay? But I'm just going to tell you where I would start this, okay? And then you'll have to adjust as you figure it out. Is the number of appointments you're going to have to attend in order to get 25 closings is going to vary based on what type of prospecting you're doing. Meaning, if you're working mostly your sphere of influence and you're getting a ton of referrals from your sphere of influence, you might not have to go on very many more than 25 appointments in order to get that, because a referral is going to happen way more often than just you going and knocking on a cold door. Or if you're working for sale by owners or expireds, you might have to go. So if somebody's doing expireds and you're a newer agent or for sale by owners, you might have to go on 100 appointments in order to get 25 transactions to close. So like, it's kind of one of those things where, let's say that if I'm doing it by referral, I might only have to go on 30 to get 25. But if I'm doing the other, I might have to do 100. So here's kind of what I've found is a great rule to start with is this, is I would just say to look at it from the standpoint of if you got to do 25 transactions, just double whatever the number is here, double that is a starting place. Now, like I said, depending on what type of prospecting you're doing, you might have to double it again even. But if you're getting a lot of referrals and you're finding, hey, when I go on appointments, they turn into transactions, then that might be good enough, okay? So just as a general rule, I would say though, that I need to go on probably 50 appointments in order to get 25 closings to take place, okay? Now, so then the next line is total listings taken. So the next question is, of these 25 closings, how many are gonna be listings that I'm gonna get sold and how many are gonna be buyers? So here's how I say to do this as well. This is gonna vary for each person, but usually I say you're gonna be somewhere between 70 and 80%. When you're new, 70 to 80% of your closings are probably going to come from buyers as a newer agent. Okay. The longer you're in the business, the more that'll swing the other direction. Is the longer you're in the business, you'll do less and less buyers and more listings. But to begin with, kind of plan it is you're going to do 70 to 80% of these being buyers. So if that's the case, and I'm looking at listings sold here or listings taken, then I would need to look at that and go, okay, 7 out of 10 or 14 out of 25, and then probably another 3. So 17 or 18 of the 25 are going to probably be buyers, which means that the other 8 or so are going to be listings. So then I would write down total listings sold 8, which means I probably have to take, let's just say 10, okay, to get 8 sold. I'm probably gonna have to take 10 listings. Buyer controlled sales, we just did that, is gonna be probably in that 17-ish range. Make sense? Okay. All right, outgoing referrals. On that one, I think you should target to do 1 a quarter. So for a year of outgoing referrals. Outgoing referrals is you finding somebody that wants to buy outside of our market area. So like, for instance, even somebody moving to St. George, you should probably refer that rather than go do it. So that would be outgoing referrals. You should try to find at least one a quarter that you're sending into our relocation department of, hey, this person needs to sell or buy, but it's outside of our market area. Make sense? All right. And then total days worked on that one. So let's do this. So here's what we're going to do now. So let me erase some of this here. So total days work. So now we're going to get into the schedule piece of this for a second. Is this so exciting? All right, I'm glad. Are you guys in Zoom excited? You don't have to lie.
It's great.
No, it is okay.
It's great.
Okay, good. All right. So the next thing on here is total days work. So what I would recommend you do on this is you want to get a calendar. Remember, we just talked about planning your vacations and stuff. So you should know kind of like how much time you're taking off. From there, you should be able to then go through and go, okay, here's the days that I'm going to work. Now, I'm going to give to you what I think the ideal schedule is for you to work. Now, as I give you the schedule though, I also recognize some of you are I'm gonna give the schedule and some of you are gonna go, I can't do that. So like, looks like Melissa stepped away from her computer for a second, but like for her, I know she's got kids at home that during summer she's busy with right now. And then in August or September, they're gonna go back to school. And so I get that you're gonna have, some of you are gonna have like, well, I can't do what I'm gonna write down. But there are pieces of it that you have to do. So you decide what that's going to look like. Okay. So in terms of days worked, you're going to figure out how many days you're going to work. Now, the next step then with this is to put together like the number of hours and stuff you're going to work. Because that's the next, or total contacts, I guess, but total days work, then prospected and contacts. Okay. So basically I'm going to give to you our top agent here in Utah is a guy that's down in St. George. His name's Brian Burnett. He made about $3 million last year. So I'm going to show you what his schedule looks like for him to make $3 million. And a lot of times people hear $3 million and go, well, I don't want to have to work that hard. What you're going to see is it's not that hard. But so here's the thing. So for me, I always start when I'm talking about your schedule is you need to start with the day before. And what I mean by that is start with when are you going to go to bed? Because if you stay up too late, you probably won't get up early. And you need to do some certain things. So for me, here's how I always train it is you should every day, you should in the morning get up and do some reading. So you should get up and do some type of reading in the morning and then some form of exercise too, okay? Oops, I think I spelled that wrong, but you get it, exercise. So some form of exercise every day. And then I hate that I have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I run into this too often. Shower every day. Okay, like I actually had one day I was down on the second floor here at this office talking to an agent and I was like, he stinks so bad. Like I probably shouldn't even said they stink so bad. Like I was like, you need to shower. So the funny thing is I taught a class and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. I had an agent from down in our St. George office that I know had been online in the class when I talked about this and said, make sure you're showering, you don't stink. And I got down to St. George later that week and was talking to this agent. And I was like, you didn't hear a thing I said, like you stink, like their clothes smelled and like, just don't stink. In fact, remember I said to you, 13 out of 14 agents will fail out of this business. The guy that mentored me on a lot of this stuff I'm training you guys on, I asked him one day, how do you tell the people who are going to make it in this business and the people who aren't? And he said, there's only one way you can tell. And it's if they stink, they're not going to make it. So don't stink is why I put this up here. All right. Is that good enough on the shower? All right. And then the next piece of this is every morning at 7 a.m. is we have role play that goes on. Okay. So you can participate in role play either here in person or there's a Zoom link. You can get on the Zoom link and participate that way. But every morning, 7 o'clock. Now, again, as I said, I know some of you are going to be like, oh, I can't make this schedule work. If you can't follow it the way I'm saying, then you're going to have to adjust. But here's the key thing. Somewhere in your day, you've got to schedule in some role play. You got to get in some practice. Okay. 8 o'clock every day, we have morning ascent. So I'm just going to abbreviate as that. That's MA, but morning ascent. Every day at 8 o'clock is morning ascent. And then 9 o'clock, from 9 until noonish, at least 11:30, should be prospecting. Okay. Now, again, like I said, I know some people are going to be like, that doesn't work for my schedule. But whatever your schedule is, you got to figure out when during the day are you going to prospect. And our recommendation as a company is that you get 30 contacts minimum during the day. So figure out when are you going to get your contacts in, okay? So from 9 until noon, then at noon, you can go do lunch. Oops, I don't know why I'm writing noon, lunch. 1 o'clock then is lead follow-up. So now, I'm giving you, remember, this is the schedule of an agent that makes $3 million a year. So if you'll follow it, you can do the same. Because here's the thing. I will tell you the secret to him doing this, him making the money is, the secret to it is his consistency in following this. It's not that he's like I don't want to take away from his skills. He's got great skills, but it's because of his consistency. If he wasn't as consistent as he is, he wouldn't do it. And so part of what I mean by that is when he comes up here for a summit, when Brian Burnett comes up here for a summit starts at 11:30. You will find him here in the office prospecting before summit. Versus you and I, if we drove down to St. George for a summit, we'd be like, yeah, I'm not working. I'm just going to go to summit. Not Brian. He prospects. It's the consistency of this is the secret. Okay. All right. So 1 o'clock's lead follow up. 2 o'clock then is appointment prep time. Then 3 o'clock is the first appointment of the day. And 5 o'clock was his second appointment, and his goal is to be home at 6 o'clock every day. And he pretty much does that. Now, what I recommend usually for you guys is have one day of the week, though, that you would do a 7 o'clock appointment. So just pick one day of the week that you would do this. Now here's the key thing. Remember we talked about Chick-Fil-A and they're not open on Sundays? Like if whatever your business was, you decided we're not open on Wednesdays, then just don't be open on Wednesdays. Like whatever your schedule is, the key pieces you need to have in your schedule is some role play every day, some prospecting every day, lead follow-up time, appointment prep time, and when are you going to do your appointments? So just decide. Like I know one other agent, she's not with our company, but she makes millions of dollars a year in real estate as well. And I think she's somewhere kind of Midwest is where she works at. She will not do her appointments are 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. because she wants to be home by 3 o'clock every day. And so that's just how she's structured it. So what do you do if you come across it? What would that agent do if she comes across somebody that can't meet until 5 o'clock at night? She refers it out to somebody else. So the point is come up with this is your schedule and make sure you get these pieces into your schedule and then just stick with it. And go find people who want to work your schedule. If you come across somebody who doesn't want to work your schedule, there's always like I guarantee you right now, if I said, hey guys, I don't want to go show houses or go on a listing appointment at 5 o'clock tonight, would somebody pay me a 25% referral fee if I gave you the listing? Almost every hand on Zoom and here would go, I'll take it. Like you'll find people that will do it. So figure out your schedule and then be like what I was saying of Chick-fil-A. Just be like, that's my schedule. I don't vary from it. This is how it works. And then go find people who will meet your schedule. See, the people who are real, that like really have motivation to get a property sold or whatever, they'll work into your schedule. They'll take time off of work or whatever it is to meet your schedule. Think about it, like you don't call up the doctor and tell the doctor when you want to come, or the dentist, right? They tell you, here's where do you want morning or afternoon? Here's when we've got appointments. Come on in and meet at that time. Like you just want to be that same way. Here's when I have available and work it according to your schedule. All right, any questions on that? Okay, all right, so let's finish off. We'll just be a few more minutes. We're almost done. So now that I've figured out section 2 on my goals, turn the page now, we go to section 3, is prospecting. So the next piece of this is you're going to decide your sources of business. So that's section 3 is then sources of business. You should have 2 or 3 sources of business, one of them being your sphere of influence. So work your sphere of influence as 1, and then if it's for sale by owners and expireds, that would be fine as 2 and 3. Or door knocking and internet leads as 2 and 3 is fine. Like you just choose 2 or 3 sources for business. And on Thursday, we'll go through Thursday and next Tuesday, we're going to go through and talk about all the different sources of business that you can work. All right. Total hours prospected. You should be able to get that from what you come up with on your schedule. Your sphere of influence then is the next section. You're going to just, how many people do you have in your sphere of influence today and how many will you have by the end of the year? So, and then the difference between how many you have today and how many you have by the end of the year is how many you need to add. Okay. And then you're going to, how often are you going to email them? How often will you mail them? How often will you personally call them? Your personal contact should be minimum once a quarter. You should never go more than a quarter. Okay. And then it's got social networks. Section 5 then has the mindset, the books you're going to read, which I've given you 2 today. I'll give you more on Thursday. Events and trainings you'll attend, audios you'll listen to. Next page is the company meetings you can go through. And then section 9 is the skill sets. So what skills are you going to work on and who will you role play with? So remember that we talked about that here in terms of role play. So go through section 9 and do that. And then page 10, or sorry, section 10 on the last page of the business plan is accountability. So that's why we talked about this accountability here. Who are you going to have hold you accountable? How often will you do it? And then systems and strategies. What systems and strategies and tools are you going to want to use? And then the final piece of this is this. I'm going to do one thing with you real quick. So let me erase the schedule here. All right. The last section on the business plan there talks about challenges and solutions. Okay. Now, so let me show you this. If I had a sailboat here, which you might think that looks like a putting green instead of a sailboat, but it's a sailboat. Okay. So if I have a sailboat here and I'm sitting at this spot right here, which is point A, and I want to sail my sailboat over here to point B. So I want to go from point A to point B, but the wind is blowing like this. Can I do it?
You have a paddle?
Oh, great question. No paddle, no motor. That it's just, I'm relying on the sail of the sailboat. So I have no paddle, no motor. Could I sail from point A to point B if the wind is blowing straight at my face? Anybody on Zoom know?
I'd say anything's possible.
Okay, good. Oh, which while I'm thinking about it, I noticed that we had a couple other people that joined. For you two, that others that joined on Zoom, make sure you throw your name in the chat box so that I have a record of you being in the class. Okay, so the answer, Derek, though, is yes, you're right. Anything's possible. And I'm not a sailor, but here's what I know is it's a term called tacking. So you can do it. You can sail from point A to point B here with the wind blowing straight in your face, but you have to use this thing called tacking. What tacking looks like is you're first going to sail off. Oh, this marker is not working. That's not good. See if this will work. You're first going to sail this way. Then you're going to turn and sail back this way. Then you're going to turn and come back and boom, you'll end up there. So that's called tacking. So what you have to do is actually head this way, then turn and head this way, then you turn and head back. So, but what is, if to the person sitting on the shore here, watching the sailor start out this way, what does it look like?
So you just go the other way.
Yeah, you're like, see, you're never, I told you couldn't do it. Like you're headed the wrong direction. Then they turn and come back this way and they're like, see, told you still couldn't do it. Then they turn and go, oh, I guess you did. So that's the idea of on this business plan, the challenges and solutions. See, the first thing we have to do if we were doing this is to sit here and say, okay, I want to get from where I am now to this point out here, but the wind is blowing straight in my face. How am I going to do it? So then you can come up with solutions. That's the idea of this last part of the business plan. Now that you've put together the plan, what are the challenges that show up? Now, here's the thing too. As you put together a business plan, the moment you put together the plan, you actually already know, for the most part, the challenges you're going to have to achieving this business plan. So that's why we have written on there, what are the challenges you foresee to achieving these goals? And then write down the challenges, but then immediately after that say, okay, so now what are the solutions? How do I get over, around, or under those solutions or those challenges? And because here's the thing, let's take this to the next level. What if I was sitting in the sailboat right here and I wanted to get from point A to point B? I don't have an oar and I don't have a motor and there's no wind. Now what?
Swim.
Swim's the answer, right? That's the only way you're going to get there. Because what's going to happen if to the sailboat in this body of water if there's no wind? What's it going to do?
Drift.
It's going to drift. And are you ever going to get anywhere drifting? Well, you're going to get somewhere, but not where you wanted to go, right? You're stuck with going wherever the current takes you. So now notice this. Part of what I want you to notice is notice the challenge. The thing that we thought was there keeping us from getting there is actually the thing that's going to get us there. So part of what I want you to realize is this. The whole purpose of setting a goal, so we just spent an hour and 20-ish minutes talking about goals. The whole purpose of setting a goal is to figure out what are the forces that are there to keep you from getting it. And then from there saying, now how do I use those forces to actually get there? Because it looks like the wind is there to keep you from sailing to this where you want to go. But actually harnessing the forces of the wind is actually the reason we're going to get there. Now, it's not going to be a straight line. You're going to be off track a little bit, or at least look like you're off track. But as long as you're slowly progressing towards there, that's the idea of this tacking. I'm headed in the general direction. Even though it might not be a straight line, I'll get there. And that's the idea of this business plan, is now that you've done it, is you're saying, okay, what are the forces that are going to keep me from getting where I want to go? And how do I actually harness those and use them to actually get where I want to go? Does that make sense? All right. Questions? Thoughts? Comments? All right. Well, thanks for being here. So Thursday's class is going to be lead generation. So basically what we're going to do now Thursday is we're going to talk about, and really we're going to spend the time on Thursday is how do I set appointments? How do I get good at setting appointments? And I'm going to just walk you through the process of getting good at setting appointments. So sound good? Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being on Zoom. Appreciate you guys and your input. And thanks for you guys being here in person.
Thank you.
Okay. See ya.